welcome to Laments. I am Sharon Ijason. Recently, President Muhammadu Buhari assented to the Petroleum Industry Bill, now Petroleum Industry Act. That will be our focus on this edition of the program. We will be right back. The Nigerian Constitution posts that the primary responsibility of the government is the safety of lives and property of the citizens. But the worsening security situation across the country in the last 10 years has put this assertion to test. From the north to the south, lives are no longer safe. Kidnapping, banditry, castle rustling, attacks on government facilities and security agents have made life more challenging for the average citizen. The campaign from security agencies now is that everyone should prioritize own security.
Insecurity has been a major setback to us, as our industry are grappling with the effects of it, which can be seen in areas of reduced investment, divestment, job losses. This dangerous trend, if not checked, may get to the point where we may not explore the inherent opportunities of the proposed PIB when it eventually becomes a law.
In contributing its quota to the quest for peace in Nigeria, PENGASSAN embarked on a security awareness program across Kaduna, Port Harcourt, Warri, and Lagos zone, with its climax in Abuja.
You will all agree with me it's not safe. Taking yourself to certain sit-out joints can make yourself very vulnerable. Those that have criminal tendencies that have you as a target can monitor you and catch up with you there. In the struggle for our union.
The Inspector General of Police here represented says community policing is paying off.
We have written an open letter to the presidency on this day. It was published in some national newspapers on our concerns, especially in states, hotbed states like Zamfara, Kaduna, even Port Harcourt, And we are talking of not only for our members who work in these strategic places, but also for the Nigerians, individuals, everything, Because if you look at it, it has a lot of impact, even both on food production, because food prices are going up, and then also halting the diversification plan of government, if any, from oil, which maybe 40 years from now is gone and everything, to maybe agriculture. And the middle belt and the north, they are the food basket of the country. So we should be looking forward of this high implication. What of our kids, their education? People cannot go to school in some states in Kaduna. Even people are afraid to send their children even to body as it's even in the south. It's in their mind too, because they are afraid rather these remote schools, because most good educational facilities are already in remote areas, whether they can be accessed by these people and for political gains. And we call on the so-called bandits and everything to leave our children alone, leave the civilians, everything, leave our women. These are psychological, they say it won't all go well for the country in the long run.
Thank you once more for giving us this opportunity.
In Lagos Zone, Chairman of Lagos Zone of the Union disclosed during a security awareness campaign that there is need for more resources to be allocated to the police, whose responsibility is to maintain internal security.
We have come to offer synergy. We have come to offer partnership. We have come to appreciate your gallant work. We have come to say thank you, because you being awake ensure that we sleep with our two eyes closed. And having come to the realization that it is good to celebrate our heroes while they are still alive, PENGASSAN, as one of the foremost trade unions in Nigeria, took a bold step to celebrate our security men and women, to say within the society, a realm celebrate your gallantry, and we celebrate all your exploit. And we pray that God will continually protect and preserve you.
In the struggle for our union. Moving train
the meeting with the union, the Lagos Commissioner of Police, Akeem Odumosu, reiterated the commitment of the police towards protecting the people.
In an environment of insecurity, nothing goes. That's it. So that's why being appreciated, being monitored, and having a community chartered on us, so it means that we are being appreciated without declaring profit after tax. So thank you a lot for that. And I keep on telling my officers, keep on doing what you can do, you know how to do, and put in your best. Any job that one does without passion, you will see any problem there as obstacle. But once the passion is there, any problem in code you see it as a challenge that you need to surmount and get to a higher one. And the higher one goes now, the more issues come up, and the more you surmount the problems. So that is what we are using to survive in Lagos State.
The high point of the event was a recognition and honor to selected security officials for their exemplary performance. On the profile interview segment this week, I will be speaking with the national president of PENGASSAN, Comrade Festus Osifo. He spoke about several issues as it affects members of the industry. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you so much.
A lot has been happening in the oil and gas industry recently, and for PENGASSAN, I would like to start with the issue of insecurity, whereby your leadership thought it wise for you to have that conversation and discuss security and how it affects your members. Can you bring us up to speed on why you decided to actually bring this to the table on your different geopolitical zones as a topic to ensure that probably maybe governments listen and take heed to whatever the recommendations will be?
Yeah, security has actually been a challenge in our country for a very long time. So we felt that in PENGASSAN, we had two options. Either we fold our arms and we allow the situation to continuously deteriorate, or we will partner with government to ensure that the security situation is improved. So what we decided in the neck of PENGASSAN that was held in Benin on the 30th of June. So what we collectively decided was that let our voice be heard, let us reach out to the key stakeholders in the security circle, and let's inform them that we understand what they are doing, we know the difficulties that they are passing through, we know the issues that are abound, but that at the end of the day that we are in need together, and to also push government to do the needful. Because you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and you are expecting a different result. Today, our military, our police, they are not well kitted. They don't have the right tools to be able to combat these issues of insecurity. So that was why we thought it wise that let's organize a program across the 4 zones of PENGASSAN. So we started that program from the Kaduna zone. We moved from Kaduna to Warri zone. Then from Warri zone, we moved to Port Harcourt zone, and we now ended in Lagos zone. Before we now had the national program to climax the week-long activity. And it was, from the feedback we got, I think it was quite good because on the final day, we identified 8 police officers who have distinguished themselves in their chosen field. So we brought them to Abuja, including the DSS Port Harcourt. So we gave them an award, a monetary sum, in order to encourage them and ensure that, when they go back to their respective domain, when other police officers, we see the way they show that example, the reward that they got from doing what is right, no matter the amount of money, they would tend to people will tend to emulate them and do what is right. So for us, that is actually the key.
Okay, moving forward, or still on this matter of insecurity, can you tell us We know that we have some of your members offshore, we have them onshore. What has been their experience? Has there been any point in time whereby you received a call as a leader, whereby you are informed that maybe some of your members have been kidnapped? And if there has been any case, how did the union handle the matter?
Yeah, you know, for us, we actually, we've had cases of kidnap. I mean, we are in Nigeria, we are not insulated from the issues of insecurity. So what we actually did was that, I mean, we've had our members kidnapped. There was one that was kidnapped about a month ago. He was just released a few days ago from one of the IOCs. They actually kidnapped him around his place of work. So it was that bad. Then we also have our member that works in a service company in One that was kidnapped say around February this year. So we have had our own fair share of it. Yeah, when such thing happens, what we normally do is that we work with the parent company and the security agencies to try and reach out as much as we can. Then beyond all this as well, we are in some of our installations, in some of our fields, we have had cases where some of our field, they were attacked by sea pirates and all that. So part of what we have been trying to push in the 90 we have been trying to push to government is that the more we have this insecurity, the more investors will tend to shy away. The more we have this insecurity, the more we are losing foreign direct investment. Today now, NNPC is now moving from a statutory body to a limited liability. So what that does is that it's going to bring some level of transparency to the process. It's going to bring some level of accountability because when you are registered under CAMA, there are some certain things you cannot do. But we would have envisaged that NNPC should be a public limited or a public liability company. When it's a public liability company, the visibility would have been much more. It could have been listed in the Security and Exchange Commission. But the way it is now is much more better than where we are coming from. From a statutory corporation to where we are today, where is now a company under CAMA. And it will be incorporated by Ministry of Finance Incorporated, as well as Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated. So it's still 100% owned, but there's a provision that over time, gradually over time, some of the shares of NNPC will be sold to the public. So that is one beautiful thing that came. Then another thing that is also there in the law was the penalty that was not defined for flaring. There's a higher penalty for flaring. There are also some provisions on environmental remediation funds. There are provisions for the commissioning and decommissioning fund. So these are some of the things that are in the PIB that for us, we are a bit excited about.
Well, we know that the petroleum product makes life easier for us, but with these gains that might be beneficial to all, do you think that there will be this will to ensure that there are implementation of those policies?
Yes, that is the thing. What we are advocating for is that the PIA should be fully implemented. Because you will not gain, there are a lot that we lose as a country if the Petroleum Industry Act is not fully implemented. So for us, we are advocating that there should be a thorough implementation of it. Now that they are setting up the upstream regulatory commission, as well as the downstream the mid and downstream regulatory authority.
So there's a mid now?
Yes, there's a mid and downstream regulatory authority. Okay. Before now, DPRO was in charge of all, both the upstream, the mid, and the downstream. But this PIB now created two distinct regulatory bodies, which we think was not ideal, which we think was not the best, which we believe that is a duplication of function per se, and we believe that there's going to be interagency rivalry. We have said before now that there should be one regulatory body, just as it is in the in telecommunication sector, as it is in broadcasting, as it is in pension, as it is in the financial space, where you have one regulatory body. So we advocated that there should be one single regulatory body. Because what we have done today, you know, the Orosai report at the time said that we have actually, we have a lot of agencies. The agencies should come together. When we are supposed to be consolidating on that, we are now doing things that it's even replicating more agencies. Because if you look at the functions of both, yes, one will be in charge of upstream, one will be in charge of downstream. But you have board of directors over there, you have board of directors here. So at the end of the day, there's what we call MUDA. MUDA is the wastages. So we see the duplication of those functions as wastages. We believe that this PIB will bring a lot of investment to Nigeria because we need to quickly develop our oil and gas reserves. We have about 37 billion barrels of oil and gas reserves. If we don't develop it now, the energy transition is going to catch up. And when we are caught up in that web, it will be extremely difficult for us to develop the oil and gas industry. Just as we have the coal industry, that if you go to Enugu today, you have chunk of it buried on the underground because coal is no longer the in thing. You understand? But the crude oil is. But if we don't channel the right energy today, I can tell you that in the next 20 years, most of those oil reserves will be down there without development. So this is the best time for government to woo in investors for them to develop most of the fields.
So do you think the PIA is going to be a game changer owing to the fact that there are some oil producing countries that are looking at clean energy moving forward?
Yes, that's one of the downside of the PIA. You know, one of the because our advocacy during the public hearing, National Assembly, we made a presentation, and part of the presentation was that in the PIA or then the PIB, there is no provision. There is no provision that talks about renewable energies. There is no provision that talks about how do we transit from the fossil fuel today. How do we transit into renewables? Because the world is moving towards renewables. So that was why I said that if we don't quickly develop these areas today, it is going to be a problem in the future.
And how is it going to affect the workers?
Yes, of course. The worker, even when renewables comes, the workers as well, they are also going to transit. So what we are preaching today is that we should start developing skill set. We should start developing capacity for workers to be able to transit from the status quo into the new realities. So for us, in the part of PENGASSAN, some of the things we are doing is enlightenment. Some of the things we are doing is for us to continuously inform our members of the challenges that may come, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So we will build a lot of capacities so that our members will not be caught up in the web.
Okay, there's been a lot of discussion about the refineries. You've said at several fora that you would advise that the government should not sell refineries to private individuals. Can you explain why you would say this?
Yes, for us, the refineries are our key national assets. If you visit the refinery, in fact, if you go to Port Harcourt Refinery, you need to take a vehicle, a car, to go around it because it's massive. These are massive national assets. The new Port Harcourt Refinery was just built over 30 years ago, so it's relatively new. So what we have advocated over time is that government should freeze the refinery. After freezing all the refineries, when they are now producing, you can now divest. You can now use the same model you are using in the NLNG, where government is having 49% stake and private investors are having 51% stake. A study was done by BPE at the time. They were trying to sell the refinery, so they now did a study. When they did that study, they realized that the money that even the investors were willing to pay, it was peanuts. Peanuts. So if you sell the refinery, all the refineries, the way they are today, I can tell you that the money you will rake in from it cannot even build one refinery. In some cases, biannual maintenance that ought to be carried out in those refineries as you operate them. But we fail to do this over the years. So that is why the refineries are in the state of comatose today. But we are quite excited with what is going on in the refineries today. If you go to the Port Harcourt refinery, you realize that the contractors are mobilizing to site. If you go to the Warri and the Kaduna refineries, they just approved the amount of money that will be used in fixing those refineries. You know, people have asked, why are we expending such amount of money in our refineries? And considering from the last NIETI report that in 2019, we NNPC imported about 20 billion liters of PMS. So what that did was that you are only exporting jobs. 20 billion liters. So imagine if you could refine half of that, if you could refine 2/3 of that locally. So imagine the number of jobs that will be created and the value chain.
Since we have workers that are actually upskilled or probably are trained to do this job, are you saying now that they are left without no jobs, or they are there but they've not been optimized?
Yes, I go with the latter. They've not been optimized. Our members over there, they have the right skill set. They have the right capacity and the competence to run the plants. But when they write to their management, and their management inform government that, okay, all the money we have been making from these refineries, we have been turning it into the federation account. But at this point, we need to maintain our refineries because it is part of the OEM recommendation that every year you strip down some certain parts and you maintain. And government did not vote money for us to do that. So they write first year, they write second year, and they keep running. The plant, over time, what is going to happen? The plant is going to collapse. So that is exactly what has happened. So these are members over time. Yeah, they've deployed, NNPC is quite big, so they deployed a number of them to other SBUs. Some of them today are working in Kidnapping, some are in NGC, some are in PPMC, and all that. So, but what we are advocating is that let us fix the refineries. When we fix the refineries, we can now bring in private investors for us to now transit into the NLNG model. But one good thing they are also doing today is that as they are trying to fix the refineries, they are also putting in place the O&M strategy, the operation and maintenance strategy, in such a way that the maintenance will be outsourced to people who clearly understand how to run refineries. Then these are members will be supporting those companies. So for us, it's also a good strategy, but overall, at the end of 3-4 years, we'll be much more excited if the refineries are now working, and if government now divests 51% of government shares to private investors, and they still retain 49, just as it is in NLNG, so that the private investors will take it more to a higher level.
Okay, so if you're concerned about outsourcing job in the oil and gas sector, what do you think needs to be done to ensure that more jobs are created? Because we have unemployment on the rise. And is there probably a strategy that you can recommend to government and maybe relevant stakeholders, and perhaps maybe 1,001 jobs can come up from this sector?
Yeah, it's a shame really that oil and gas that contributes about 95% of our foreign exchange earning, oil and gas is contributing just less than 10% to our GDP. Producing crude oil and exporting abroad will not add much more to the jobs that are being created. But if we produce this crude oil, then at the end of the day, we refine the product. Then you create more jobs, and at the end of the day, you will now also improve our contribution to the GDP. So for us, we encourage government to deepen the value chain, to create the enabling environment so that the IOCs and the indigenous producing companies will move into refineries, for example. Why can't Shell, Total, Chevron, why can't they have refineries in Nigeria? Why can't you create that environment for them to, because we have a market. About 200 million people is no joke. So by the time we create the enabling environment, by the time the environment is right, these people will tend to build refineries because that is really what is sustainable. I know that Yes, we could say that people are moving away from fossil fuel. Why should they not come today to build refineries? For us, we know that oil will still be there in the next 10, 20 years. If they build refinery today, probably in the next 10 years, they will recoup their investment. So it's something that our policy makers in the oil and gas industry must look into.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sharon. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.